All right. Welcome, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with my partner, Sean Williams. It's a kind of a post-free agency, pre-draft kind of show. We're going to talk a little bit about, what happened with that boy named Sue and why he went to the Rams instead of us. And we'll touch on...
He sucks. Excuse me.
We'll touch on some things that the Saints need to do now that free agency, for the most part, is over with. It's now really gearing up towards the draft. We have pro days, and we just have to kind of turn our focus to that. So, without any further ado, my partner down there in the small box, who seems to have an allergy problem when I mention the name Sue, Sean, how you doing tonight?
Doing fantastic, man. How about you? How's things in River Ridge?
Oh, if it's any better, I'd send my twin brother to come do this show instead of me.
And on that note, we want to thank everyone for joining us tonight and invite you guys to subscribe to us on iTunes, on YouTube, at Under the Dome, Twitter, at Under the Dome PO1, at 79 Saints, at JB Pinto 3, at Drew's Dad 3721. Y'all can slow this down for the hearing impaired. Yeah, I don't know where that came from, but anyway.
If you would like a transcript of this show, please take out a pen and a piece of paper and write down everything we say.
Yeah, I wish I'd have thought of that, actually. Anyway.
Credit Walton and Johnson for that one.
Yeah, it is what it is. We're visceral. We're heartfelt. We are who we are. You love us for that. And thank you guys so much for joining us tonight for Under the Dome. You mentioned it earlier, a boy named Sue. Just for the record, for anyone who is unclear about exactly where I stand on Ndamukong Suh and his possible suiting up in the black and gold, thank God he is not going to. I never wanted Ndamukong Suh. I never believed he was an integral part of what we wanted to accomplish for the coming season. We're not going to suck because Sue is not a part of this team. Sue, as far as I'm concerned, God bless him. He revealed his true colors. He took the money and ran. He went to that mushroom cloud that shall soon be the Los Angeles Rams locker room. Whatever happens, happens. We gave him the opportunity to be a part of something that was on the upswing and something that looked like it had promise. He chose not to take it, not for the money, but...
Well, he did take the money. I mean, he really did take the money. And, here's the thing. A lot of people... There are some people like you and I who think the Rams are going to just totally implode with all these personalities they have in the locker room. But here's the thing you have to look at as far as why the Rams did what they did. It's not so much about winning a championship this year. The LA Rams came back, left Los Angeles in the early 90s because of lack of interest by the fans. Los Angeles as a whole does not care particularly about the NFL, much less about the Rams. And the Chargers have this problem too. So the league has been trying to get this team or a team back in that city. The team they really liked was actually the Raiders. That was the team they liked. That was the team that the fans seemed to go to. But you saw, and it's not just because it's the Coliseum and it seats 100,000 people and it's in a rotten neighborhood and all these other things. you saw in Los Angeles a very ambivalent to almost disinterested fan base for this franchise. Heck, the Chargers are playing in a soccer stadium. You know, they're playing. It's almost like playing in Tad Gormley if you're from New Orleans, or Tulane's Yeoman Stadium. You know, watching a Saints game there. It's 20,000, 30,000 people at most that fit in that stadium, and they were still having trouble selling that out. So, in order to generate interest in the Los Angeles market, you're seeing the Rams engage in these big dramatic moves to kind of make Los Angeles a lot like the Lakers. You know, it's showtime. You have celebrities showing up in the suites and who are on the sidelines, big fans, much like Jack Nicholson showing up in Lakers games. They want this to become where you need to be seen. If you're a celebrity, you're seen at Los Angeles Rams games. And the way you do that is to magnify star power. Jared Goff's not a star yet. Sean McVay, the head coach, is not a star. So they got to bring in NFL-level stars. That's why you see this interest now in trying to trade for Odell Beckham. It's not so much that they need a Beckham or they need a Sue or whatever they need to get to the next level in the playoffs. It's that, they want to energize this fan base to get them interested in supporting the Rams. Here, you have a home playoff game. You were the second seed, but if you listen to that game against the Falcons, that first playoff game against the Falcons, it was dead. There really was not much interest. I'm sorry, they were the third seed. They were not the second seed. They were the third seed. There was not much interest in that game from the fans. It was relatively quiet, and that's what they want to change. So that's why they offered Sue so much money. They gave him $14 million. Play for us for a year. Let's see what happens. See if we can get people excited, even if it's negative publicity. There's no such thing as bad publicity if you're trying to get people in the stands. And that's why they did what they did. And Sue, of course, is going to take the money. That was his whole reasoning to do this long, extended tour of all these cities, was to see who was going to pay him the money, not who was going to win him a ring. And his agent threw the Jets out there just to try and drive up his price some more. And even the Jets weren't buying that. The Jets were like, no, we don't need you that bad. We're not going to pay you. We'll pay you X amount of dollars, probably not much more than what the Saints and the Rams and the Titans offered. The difference is, I think the Saints probably offered him a couple-year deal, a 2-year deal. I'm just guessing, but I would guess he probably was about a 2-year deal, whereas the Rams just said $14 million. There you go. Right, 1-year deal. You get $14 million cash. We can play this game again next year. And that's what he wants at this point of his career. He knows there's only so many contracts he has left.
I look back on it, and 3 weeks ago on Facebook, I said, Ndamukong Suh is not going to be in a New Orleans Saints uniform this year. He is going to string the Saints on. That echo has got me.
Well,
he's going to string the Saints along until the last possible minute, when he's going to choose the LA Rams, because that's the bigger media splash that makes him a star, blah, blah, blah. Ndamukong Suh, coming out of college, was the most dominant defensive lineman that there was. He went to the Detroit Lions, and he became part of an elite defense for like 3 or 4 weeks to begin a season. Then, the rigors of a 16-week schedule caught up with him. Ndamukong Suh is about Ndamukong Suh. Bottom line, anything above, below, or beyond that is pure speculation. He is protecting his brand, not the brand of the New Orleans Saints, not the brand of the Los Angeles Rams, not the brand of the Tennessee Titans, not the brand of the New York Jets. Ndamukong Suh is protecting the brand of Ndamukong Suh. Make no mistake about it. Personally, I tend to believe that Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis, Gail Benson now is cultivating somewhat of a different culture in New Orleans. They're cultivating the culture of a team concept, which every time that there was a defensive turnover on the field last year, what did you see? The entire defense rushing out there for photo time, you know, all this and all that. But the bottom line is still it's about the team. It's not about the player. And I said that from day one. I've never made two bones about it. I don't like Ndamukong Suh. I don't like the player that he is. He's the dirtiest player in the league. Could he have made this a better defense? Possibly. But at what price? If I've got to watch a New Orleans Saints defense perform on the field and feel dirty after I've watched it, it's not really the same thing.
Well, I think some people liked it because they wanted a Kyle Turley kind of, defensive player, somebody who's going to push back, and someone who's going to push on opposing offenses. And they kind of want that bad boy, not quite the Detroit Pistons level of bad boy, but they do want a kind of a swagger, a attitude, WWE kind of defense, because that is just the culture we live in today. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of show, but they want to see in that show that, you're bad, you're a badass. So that led a lot of the drive. And, Suh would help because you have to look at this. This is just like with the Jimmy Graham issue. It takes the pressure off of you on draft day from having to, okay, these are my needs, these are my wants, these are the best player available. I graded accordingly. If the best player available is greater than my need, I'll take the best player available and watch people lose their shit because I took a guy instead of taking this guy here. I took this guy here because he's the best player available, but you didn't address the big need you had. That's the dilemma the Saints are in now that Suh is off the table and gone. So,
well, let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
The latest rumor the latest thing on the rumor mill maybe is that we might see a reunion, not quite the reunion that we envisioned with Jimmy Graham, but quite possibly a reunion with Benjamin Watson. How do you feel about that?
I love Benjamin Watson as a person. I think he's a incredibly motivating, well-spoken, great player and great writer, but I think at 37 years old, he can't run anymore. And he doesn't do you any, he's not an upgrade. You might as well stick with Fleener because Watson offers you nothing on the field. He offers you something in the locker room, and I can understand that argument. But at this point in his career, Watson's 37 years old. He'll be 38. And before anyone brings up Drew Brees doesn't have to run pass patterns. He doesn't have to generate separation from a defensive back. Doesn't have to do any of that. Brees does what he does. He's in great condition to do what he does, but he doesn't have to run And that's what I'm talking about. Watson just doesn't offer you the ability to gain separation in the mismatches that you need from the tight end position. So who do you replace? You replace him. You replace Fleener with him. Well, you can't. He's not an upgrade from Fleener. Do you replace him? You replace Hill. Hill is cheaper. Hill's going to, Hill's younger. So why get rid of Hill for an older player? And you're probably going to draft somebody. Okay. So again, where does Watson fit in with this? Do you replace Who-Man with him, or Who-Man's one of your H-back? So there's really no place for a guy like Watson. A guy like Graham, he was an upgrade over Fleener. So you can replace Fleener with Graham. But at this point now, you're looking at Watson from the, oh shit, we didn't get a tight end in the draft that we liked, so we need to bring in somebody. So that's when you would start considering Watson. But right now, no. I mean, I'd hate to sound like I'm ripping on the guy, but he's not an upgrade for you at this point of his career. It's not 2015. 2015 was a long time ago. You okay?
Yeah, I'm trying to get back with you.
Okay, did you lose me? I'm sorry.
I've got audio. I've lost my video feed. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to get back on.
All right.
Keep pontificating. You're
all right. Well, it was all quiet and I didn't see you. I'm like, oh damn, did we just freeze again? And
keep matriculating.
Keep matriculating the ball down the field, boys. All right. Yeah, so that kind of leads into our next subject then. Let's talk a little bit about the needs that the Saints have to address now that Sue is off the table. Sean Payton said at the meeting this morning at 6:15 in the morning, I can't believe that's when he did his little press conference. But he said the three areas of need that they have to address is defensive end, wide receiver, and tight end. Well, defensive line, really. Because again, that's where Sue was supposed to help, was to fit in that rotation of defensive tackle and even letting Rankins kick out to defensive end sometimes. The key at this point now is, where do those needs get filled? It's going to have to be the draft. And I've always said that you get your best pass rushers in the draft. The question now is, do you take a defensive end at 27? And if you don't see one that's really a first-round pick, do you try and trade down to pick up extra picks, or do you go ahead and take best player available? And this is the issue I was talking about before with, let's say your best player available is ranked up here, and your need is here. Logically, this is the player you take, not this one. So then you'll have people losing their mind because we don't pick again to the third round. You just passed up a defensive end, and you took a wide receiver, or you took a tight end there, or you took, even worse, you took a safety there or a linebacker there. That's the issue that we're going to run into. And that's the hard part about having to draft for need in the draft, especially when you only have 2 picks in the first and third round.
That's kind of like last year that we had the unusual luxury of having 2 first-round draft picks, and with the first we picked Marshawn Lattimore, and with the second, everybody's expecting, okay, here we're going to get Foster, we're going to get this, we're going to get, and they said Ryan Ramczyk, and everybody was like, what the hell?
Yeah, and it turned out to be a great pick.
Yeah, it turned out to be quite possibly the pick that made the season.
Yeah, and it was just like in 2015 when we took Pete with that first pick. I think it was the number 11 pick in 2015. And people like, why did you take Pete? Why didn't you? He keeps popping out. Why did you take Pete? Why did you? All right, you're back?
Fucking God.
Hey, man, you're
Did I
on the
say?
air. You're on the air, buddy.
Okay, well, hey,
Okay.
I'm human.
Yeah, I see you dropped out twice on me.
And
But
I've been sitting here for 15 minutes trying. You are already in this call. Well, take me there, man. Come on. Anyway,
okay. Well, I was going to say it was just like with Pete when in 2015 when we took him at number 11, and people are like, why are we taking an offensive lineman that early? You can get one later on, and the LSU cult was like begging for us to take. I don't remember this dude's name anymore, but he's with the Dallas Cowboys, and he was
Lyle Collins.
Yes, whatever this, screaming, losing their mind, because we didn't take him and all the rest of that stuff. But again, in the long run, it worked out best because you ended up with a guy who is a great starting guard and a good solid swing left tackle who ended up filling in a lot for an injured Teron Armstead. So, best player available, the worst thing that happens is you just have a really good football player that could possibly end up starting for you, a la Ramczyk, because of injuries and who knows what else.
I know that I'm probably not supposed to do this on the air, but I'm going to call out, man. That was part of my tour of duty, and the day after we picked Pete,
mm-hmm.
I had an on-air obligation to be on. Oh God, what was the call? It was David Schultz. I want to say Alexandria, Lake Charles, in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But he had me on, and he said, and it was done through the site that I was writing for at the time. And he said, I wanted to get your draft reaction. And I said, hey, A++++. And this is for Pete. And he said, really? And I said, absolutely. You needed offensive line help, and you got it. And you would have thought that I crapped on Thanksgiving dinner. That was about a 45 second to 1 minute segment. They got me off, got me out of there, and I have yet to be invited back. But I was right. I mean, and you fast forward to this year, everybody's talking about the trade possibilities. Well, the only thing that Seattle might want for Bobby Wagner is Andres Pete. Why are you going to trade the most valuable offensive weapon you got?
Mm-hmm.
And in my way of thinking, that is absolutely Andres Pete, because you got somebody that can play any position across the offensive front except center. And why are you going to trade that away?
Well,
that's absolutely an asset.
Offensive linemen are never sexy, and I said this after we drafted Ramczyk. Actually, I stole this from somebody on Twitter, but it's very accurate. Everyone wants the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. Nobody wants to draft the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. They just want to get it. And you have to invest in an offensive line to get an all-pro offensive line. And you've seen that over the past, 3 to 5 years, where we've drafted Ramczyk and Pete in the first rounds. You've drafted, you traded to get Unger, and you drafted Armstead in the third round, and he was the fastest offensive lineman in, combine history or whatever. Okay. And then you pay big money to bring in Warford, the guard. Okay. So you see the Saints are investing a lot of money in those 5 players up front. That's where they see the future of the franchise, improving the offensive line. Now we want to improve the defensive line. And they've been trying to do it all these years, because you go back to 2011 when we drafted Cam Jordan. I believe it was 2013 when they drafted Akeem. No, it might have been 2012 they drafted Akeem Hicks. Either 12 or 13, one of those 2 years. Okay, they brought in Akeem Hicks. 2016 they brought in Sheldon Rankins. We've also drafted David Onyemata. We drafted Davison in 2015. You know, we've spent a lot of draft capital trying to build that defensive line, because Sean Payton has decided that he wins games via his offensive and defensive lines. That's why I think, you know, you're going to see them target, not necessarily get, but you're going to see them target defensive linemen early in the draft, more so than tight end, because I think they believe they can get a quality tight end in the 3rd round. They don't have to go and grab one of those tight ends early. They feel like they're going to have to grab a defensive lineman early. And I think personally it's going to be a defensive tackle who can play end sometimes. Because that is the kind of defense I think that Dennis Allen is building, much like the offense. When you talk about Pete being able to play multiple positions on the line, they want a defensive line that they can move people from one side to the other, out of tackle into the end position, depending on matchups, to generate the best amount of pressure on a quarterback. And I think also Peyton wants a high rotation, 8 quality defensive linemen who can all rotate in and stay fresh. So the guys pass rushing in the 4th quarter are not worn out. They're coming in fresh off the bench, and generate those final drive points to help close out a game, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. I don't think that we're nearly so much in that, how do I say this? We're not so much in the drive-by-drive analysis aspect of it as we are in the depth, the just in case. As you said, if that makes any sense.
Well, you know, what are you looking for? And I'm convinced of this. When it's time for Drew to retire, I think he wants to have a solid team built around this new quarterback. So when the new quarterback comes in, he's stepping into a young but veteran team with a lot of weapons, a solid offensive line up front, and a good defense that generates turnovers, because that's key for Sean Payton, is winning the turnover battle. Generates turnovers and puts the offense in position to score again. Okay? And if he can accomplish all that by getting all those pieces into place and maybe win a championship, one more championship with Drew, then be ready for a new kid to come in and take over, that's great. But it's not about winning a championship for Drew before he retires. That's really not what's driving this team. What's driving this team now is to build a team for the long term. And whether Drew is part of that or not, that's the goal. You cannot have the mentality, and this is sort of what you're seeing with the Rams. The Rams are kind of in that win now mode, and the Vikings are to an extent too, but the Rams are kind of in that win now mode, whereas the Saints are trying to build for the long term. If we win now, great, but it's not critical. We want to win long term. We want to win over multiple seasons. We don't want to blow our load and send Drew Brees out in with a championship ring and then go through a 7-9, 6-10, 3-13 kind of season afterwards, because we're in cap hell. We traded all of our draft picks away to sign all these players, and we can't figure out how we're going to pay for them, so we got to let a lot of them go. You know, they don't want to be in that position. They want to have a young, solid core now. That was the attitude they had 2014, 2015. That's not the attitude they've got today.
It's ironic to me how quickly that everything has turned from the public perception, if you want to call it that, about how Mickey Loomis ain't got a damn clue, to, oh wow, they're doing something that's going to matter 5 years down the road, 8 years down the road. It's just really, it's funny to me how nothing has changed except the perception of that.
Well, I look at the age of these free agents they're looking at. They brought in. Now, granted, you look at a guy like Bushrod. He's at the end of his career, but he's being brought in more as a backup, not as a starter, to kind of fill that Zach Strief role that Zach is gone. But I'm talking about the big free agent signings outside of Drew Brees. The linebacker from the Jets, Davis. He's a young player. This is the kind of guy they wanted to bring in. Kurt Coleman is there to fill in a hole as well. Coleman is there to fill in that roaming safety they need, while the two starting safeties, Bell and Williams, really learn the ropes. You just need a cheaper veteran to stay there to kind of manage that back end. But it's really built around the young corners, Crawley and Lattimore. Patrick Robertson, he was brought in kind of that veteran nickel to challenge P.J. Williams and elevate P.J. Williams' game. And because we've had so many injuries. I see a lot of people talking about Delvin Breaux. They wish Delvin Breaux would stay. I think Delvin Breaux's injuries kind of cost him his time with the Saints. They can't afford to wait for him anymore. And you see already I don't think he passed the physical with the Broncos, and it's one of the reasons why he hasn't been signed yet.
I agree.
He's kind of got the Kerry Robinson curse right now. Robertson can't stay healthy either. And that's part of why he's not in the league anymore. So it's unfortunate. I really liked Breaux as a player, but this is what happens when you can't play college football for a long time because of a neck injury. This is what happens when you play Canadian football and you just don't have the experience and you get injured. And it's a bad injury for a cornerback. A leg injury is always bad for a cornerback. It's hard for him to recover from that. So, it's unfortunate. But yeah, the Saints are making moves where they're trying to put young people as starters. And if they bring in older veterans, they're bringing them in only as role players or players to kind of help the young kids learn. So, and they're bringing the older players in for short-term contracts. Sean, have you really looked at the draft at all? Do you have an idea who you think the Saints would take at 27?
Well, I think that depends on whether or not they consider themselves completely to be done with free agency at this point. I think if you're given a choice between, say, a solid edge rusher, which should be very, very reachable at 27, and a possible Jason Witten-esque career at tight end, which I believe also to be attainable at number 27, Goddard, Gesicki, Andrews, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. I think if given that choice, the Saints will choose tight end over defensive tackle every day of the week and twice on Sunday. It's really, and I told someone this earlier today, it's really, really difficult to try to gauge exactly where the team's mind is at in terms of what they're wanting to do at number 27 at this point. I would assume that it's going to be a defensive player, but they do absolutely nothing at tight end from this point to the 27th It could just as easily be that.
Well, like I said, when it comes to tight ends, I really think they're going to be looking in the third round at a tight end, not in the first round. I think they're willing to let the Goddard, the Gesicki's, and even the Andrews slide and look more at like a Dalton Schultz or somebody who
Ian Thomas.
Yeah, the kid from Wisconsin too, Troy Fumagalli, all these Italians. Troy Fumagalli, somebody like him, and I'm probably butchering every one of these names.
Check that off the list of potential.
Oh yeah, I'm a ruin every one of these names, but they're gonna look at somebody later on because I really think they're looking early in the draft at defensive line. And I think there'll be enough quarterbacks that fall. I don't think they're going to go 1, 2, 3, but I think at least 5 quarterbacks will go in the first round, which is a high number. At least 3 running backs will go, and I think the Browns take a quarterback and a running back.
They're fools if they don't.
Where that running back is, that's the Giants really are going to kind of intimidate and kind of push the Browns into one direction or another, because I think the Giants are going to look at a defensive end if they don't get the running back they want. And they want Barkley, the Penn State kid. If they don't get Barkley, they're going to go with Chubb. That's why they sent JPP over to Tampa to kind of cover their bases. Yeah, well, I was worried nobody got my joke because somebody posted a picture of JPP with the hook on his hand in Tampa. He's dressed for the part already. I went, it's me! But,
I had to clean pizza off of my wife's desk because I spewed it everywhere. Yeah, I got it.
Okay, yeah, I didn't. Captain Hook and Peter Pan. I didn't know how many people would get that joke.
I want to go on record as publicly saying Jack Kapansky, my buddy, that will be joining us on the pre-draft show on the 24th. He'll appreciate this. I think what separates the Cleveland Browns between being a serious and y'all pick yourselves up off the floor. I'm being completely up. What separates the Cleveland Browns from being a serious AFC Championship contending team and just being another AFC team is very, very easily what they choose to do with that number 1 and that number 4 pick. And in terms of my opinion, you take Saquon Barkley with the number 1.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have options left to you at number 4. And I'm talking about quality options, if you want to call it that. At number 4 in terms of quarterback, and I mean, if you want to break it down into the brutal tactics, y'all ain't done nothing with a quarterback in 20 damn years. The last quarterback y'all had was Bernie Kosar. Quarterback is not going to make your team. You need a running back, and you're not going to get a better opportunity than this young man from Penn State.
Especially playing the AFC North. You need a running game. You need a running back. Even for as wide open of a passing attack as the league is today, the Browns need a running back. The Browns need a running back to protect that quarterback and let that quarterback develop. Because here's the issue. We're talking Saint stuff, but here we're going to talk about the NFL draft. Here's the issue I have. Okay, the quarterbacks that they're going to choose from: Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, and Josh Allen. Okay, those are probably the top 4 running quarterbacks. I would throw Mason Rudolph and Lamar Jackson as 5 and 6. Okay,
I'm afraid that I really believe that Lamar Jackson, but Mason Rudolph is going to be at that fringe level, which could be first, but more than likely going to be second.
My thing is Josh Rosen has the most talent out of the 5 that I mentioned, or 6 that I mentioned. Okay. But he has Ryan Leaf and Jeff George written all over him. He scares the hell out of me. Your teammates don't even like you. And then you're going to put him in an organization like Cleveland. I think that's a nightmare. Honestly.
Well, to be honest with you, the guy that we had on for the representing the New York Jets a few weeks ago, Alan Schechter, well, actually several weeks ago, I was talking to him and I said, well, that was a heck of a trade that you guys made to move up in the draft. And he said, yeah, I think we're going to get our man. I said, I guess that's Rosen. He said, well, yeah, I can't think of that. And I told him, I said, dude, man, run, please. Cover your eyes and your ears and run like hell. And he said, why? And I said, look, you're talking about an entitled, a rich kid in a situation where he's more than likely going to be thrown to the wolves very early in his career. And you multiply that by the factor of that relentless New York media. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. That's why if I'm Cleveland, I'm taking Josh Allen at 4 because, yes, he is the most raw of the pocket passers. He's probably the most raw quarterback, but he's also the kid that you're going to be able to work with. Okay. And what's the easiest way to transition from Mr. Mediocrity, Tyrod Taylor, to a good franchise quarterback is have a strong running game with Barkley that you took in the first round. Let Allen develop. You're going to give him competent receivers because I don't want to hear about how wonderful, Josh Gordon is. He's one failed drug test away from yet another, double secret probation kind of ban from the league.
A lifetime ban this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's on double secret probation. But you want to have a good young kid, like you mentioned Bernie Kosar before, a young kid who can handle the pressure of being that kind of quarterback for this franchise and grow with that franchise, okay? You don't want a larger-than-life, hyper-competitive Baker Mayfield. You don't want Jeff George 2 / Ryan Leaf 2 and Josh Rosen. And Sam Darnold, I just don't trust USC quarterbacks. And I've watched Sam Darnold play, and he doesn't – I mean, you realize the last successful USC quarterback Carson Palmer, who's getting ready to retire or did retire. Okay, that was the last one in 2003. After that, it's like taking the University of Houston quarterback from the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, it really is.
Where Klingler? How did that turn out for you? Not too good.
I mean. Those kids were putting up video game numbers, and I know the run and shoot offense. Believe me, I know the run and shoot offense, and they were putting up Madden numbers, but they couldn't translate that game.
Did y'all ever play against Houston?
Did what?
When you were with UL?
No,
did y'all ever play?
No, we didn't play Houston back then. We played. The teams I got to watch up close and personal. We played Oklahoma State with Thurman Thomas And after he kicked our ass for a while, the coach felt bad and put in the backup. Number 21, Barry Sanders.
Barry Sanders.
I saw Brett Favre. He played against us in 89. I want to say 89. He played against us, and that was after he had 1.5 feet of his lower intestine removed. He had missed a game before and came back and kicked the crap out of us. Let's see. Who else did I see was really good? We played Alabama. That was a big deal. Oh, well, this is my freshman year, so I was watching the games on TV. I wasn't there. We played Auburn in Auburn with Bo Jackson in 1986. That was not pretty. That was not a good friend of mine who was defensive back for UL back then, or USL back then, said he came out on a sweep. And he is the last line of defense between Bo Jackson and the goal line. And this is about from midfield. He said, all I saw was that body coming towards me. He said, I got like this and closed my eyes and braced myself. He said, I've never been hit that hard in my entire life. That man was solid. So yeah, that was my era. We had good players. I mean, we had a great quarterback in
Mitchell,
Brian Mitchell. Thank you. Number 1, Brian Mitchell. Being
that's bad that a Bulldog had to tell you who you're.
Oh, I can't believe I drew a blank on that. We played Tulane a few times, kicked the crap out of Tulane. That was good. But and Brandon Stokely, Nelson Stokely, our coach's son, he was after my time. So was Jake Delhomme. But Orlando Thomas played for us too. Orlando Thomas was 87, 88, right around the same time as me. Orlando Thomas was there, and Orlando, that was a special guy. He passed away. He had ALS just like Steve Gleason, but it was bad. He passed away very quickly. We got a little wall of fame back there with some famous NFL players on there. So it got to be, we were terrible in 85. I mean, terrible. And Nelson Stokely was able to start recruiting some quality players, and we got pretty good. We had some pretty good guys for a while, and it's gotten better. We've had some more, Peanut Tillman, couple more, but we've had some good players come out of UL. But anyway,
HUD has been relieved of his duties, correct?
Yes. There was a bunch of stuff going on with that, but
I don't mean to make it break out in the dry heaves or anything, but
the cheating scandal really, it caused us to lose our, New Orleans Bowl title, and there was no New Orleans Bowl back when I was there, but losing that title, really sucks. Having to, forfeit all those wins.
In a lot of ways, it's much like the University of Louisiana at Monroe here in town. The New Orleans Bowl is pretty much the top of the heap that you can hope to achieve.
Yeah. I mean, they played.
ULM or ULL is not going to aspire to playing in the Orange Bowl or the Cotton Bowl.
No. You would like to get in the Independence or Liberty Bowl, something like that. But, the New Orleans Bowl is a good bowl for them to be in. It's an easy drive. The last one I went to had like 10,000 Cajun fans in there. It's well-attended bowl, and the city likes having UL there. They're really a lot of fun.
Well, they own that bowl for like 4 or 5 years span there.
Yeah, and when we get further in the draft, I mean, you got some good players that came out of the Sun Belt Conference. You've got Middle Tennessee's got some good receivers coming out. Western Kentucky's got some good players. There are some quality players in that level of football. When you start looking at that third day of the draft, you start seeing a lot of those guys come out. You're like, man, who the hell is Troy? And then. Yeah. Of course, LSU players know who Troy is, but that's where you see some good pass rushers, and well, that was a lot of fun because a lot of my old friends were like talking about Sun Belt, and they put greater than SEC, just to drive them crazy. But anyway, we kind of veered way off. But getting back to about the draft and things, so
now that we've alienated the college base of everybody that listens.
There we go. But yeah, I was just going to say, let the Jets make that mistake, and and let them take Rosen. Don't take Rosen in Cleveland because you've had such a horrible time with quarterbacks. Work with this kid and Josh Allen and do something and build your team the right way. Build it around the running game. Build your offensive line. Joe Thomas just retired, I know, but build your offensive lineup with all these players that you're going to be bringing in and make this team a good, solid, young team and do something with it. And, yeah, I'm a little selfish because I would like to get Baker Mayfield for the Saints as Drew Brees' heir apparent.
I am so glad you committed that to video and we have that on file. I've got it saved right there.
Yeah, I know. Well, here's the thing.
It's one thing for a defensive back slot receiver to say, hey, Baker Mayfield needs to be our quarterback. But when a former quarterback
former clipboard holder, not quarterback, I was not in that league.
Well, hey, Doug Peterson made a career of it.
Yeah, Doug Peterson's even better than I am. I'm just a guy. Anyway.
No, in all seriousness, I wouldn't say that. I mean, had this past season not gone the way that it did, and we had suffered through yet another 7-9 season, and we were picking 11, 12, 13, I would say that Baker Mayfield would be very, very possible in the target sites. But, as you and I have alluded to many times already on this show, Baker looks to be a top 8 pick. Should he slip out of the top 8?
I think Miami is really targeting him at 11 because, like I said, I can see the Browns going with either Rosen or Allen, and then the Jets taking whichever one doesn't make it that far. I see Donald going early. I see the ones I see sliding really are Lamar Jackson and Mason Rudolph are going to slide a good ways. I think the Dolphins are really gearing at 11, looking hard at trying to trade up into that top six or 7 spot so they can go get Baker Mayfield as their quarterback of the future and get rid of Tannehill. And if the Saints were going to make a move, they would have to jump ahead of the Dolphins early by jumping into that 8, 9, 10 spot right there and basically offer what the Bills, the Chiefs gave the Bills last year, the 1 and the 3, and your 1 the following year. To move up to that spot to get in front of the Dolphins and take Baker Mayfield if you're going to do that move. And this is where not getting Sue kind of hurts you, because if you had Sue already and if you were able to get Graham already, you would have the flexibility to do that. I can't see the Saints jumping up and getting Mayfield now that free agency is basically done. They didn't get Sue. They didn't get Graham. Now you need those 1 and 3 picks. Yeah. So now you're looking at more like day 3 kind of quarterbacks where you're looking at a guy like Luke Falk.
You just mentioned it earlier. It's either Middle Tennessee or Western Kentucky. I saw them both play at Tech, but Mike White.
Yeah, Mike White's another one. Mike White's really, he's Western Kentucky. I'm even looking at that kid, Kyle Lauletta, I guess, from Richmond. I'm probably butchering his name.
Lauletta.
Thank you. You know,
I'm not convinced on him because he basically played a couple of college teams, a couple of typewriter maintenance schools, and I make a joke of that, but my point is, you're not talking about playing the type of caliber that you're going to see every Sunday in the NFL, and that's not slighting his ability or how good he is or any of that. But when it comes to Sunday, there's only one yardstick that you're going to be judged by, and that is how well you perform against the guys lined up against you, and that's all that matters.
Didn't he play in the Senior Bowl though?
I think so. I'm not certain of that.
It's either the Senior Bowl or the East-West Shrine game. I don't remember. I'm trying to find that right now. So I got my books. You know, I don't have all my books yet, but I got some of my books. And it tells me some stuff.
I know Baker played. I know that I don't know, but I think that Josh Allen played in the whichever one was in Mobile.
North, Senior Bowl.
Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
As far as Luletta, Rosen, I don't think Rosen or Darnold, either one chose to play in any of those games or not.
He won the MVP of the Senior Bowl. Luletta. He won the MVP of the Senior Bowl, so that's why.
I guess he played then.
Yeah, that's why I said that's a guy to keep your eye on. If we look at a quarterback, say the 4th round, maybe the 3rd, you know, depending on how the 3rd round shakes out. So, you know, again, that's that iffy thing. If you take a defensive lineman, say in the 1st round, or worse, for Saints fans at least, worse, you take a tight end in that 1st round, then you would take a quarterback in the 3rd. Aside from the meltdown that you're going to see on social media, Twitter, and everywhere else, you know, because, oh my God, we didn't take a defensive lineman anywhere. Where the hell is this pass rush going to come from? You know, that meltdown would happen in taking those kind of players. Again, it goes back to, this is where I got a guy rated best player available. This is where my need is. I'm taking best player available. You know, this is where the issue starts coming in. So,
well,
that's the bad part about the way free agency shook out for us. Because now we don't have that flexibility. Now the need is too strong for people.
Yeah. For lack of a better way of putting it, in terms of the quarterback position, anyone that we get based on not just having number 27, but if we don't make some sort of blockbuster / mortgaging the future type of deal, basically what we're looking at in terms of quarterback in this draft is going to be a project. And if you want an idea of what a project is, look back on Garrett Grayson. That was a project. And a project... Yeah. Project, you're rolling the dice and you may come up snake eyes and you may crap out. You know, it's a 50-50 shot either way.
I think it was Mike Triplett who started this story, but other people picked it up from there. And this is why I like Baker Mayfield most of all the quarterbacks who were projected to go in that 1st round. Garrett Grayson got chewed up and spit out by Drew Brees in the film room. You know, as competitive as Drew Brees was with these quarterback challenges and things like that, he really destroyed Grayson's confidence in that film room. And you're going to have to be a particularly confident player, an aggressive player, to match Drew Brees for his off the field as well as on the field. Drew is not going to be – this is the other mythology that people have about NFL quarterbacks, and I can attest a little bit to this. Not much, but a little. When you're the starting quarterback, you get all the reps, okay? When you're the starting quarterback, it's all about you. And unlike offensive line, defensive line, receivers, running backs, whatever. You're the guy who's going to take every offensive snap, just you. Everybody else has an opportunity to play, okay? Either as a rotational player, in a case of a skill player like a receiver or a running back, or a rotational player, a nickel back in the secondary, a pass covering linebacker, a pass rusher on defense, or even an offensive line in case of injury. You're going to step in there and play, or maybe come in on short yardage situations as an extra blocker. The backup quarterback only sees that field when he either is replacing somebody for injury or he is replacing a starter for ineffectiveness, okay? So the starting quarterback does not want you to be there because you exist only to take his job. You don't exist for any other reason but to take his job. So the starter is going to do everything he can to make sure you don't get his job. And he's going to show you up in front of coaches. He's going to expose you with plays that you can't make, all those things. And that's what makes all that stuff that we like about Drew Brees, that competitiveness, that drive for perfection. When he makes a mistake, he gets pissed off at himself. And you see him on the sideline with the hat turned backwards, he's looking at the thing, and you see him scrolling through it and looking at it. All the formations. How did I make this mistake? And after he sees what he did, he looks up like, son of a bitch, I can't believe I just did that. And I guarantee he's not going to make that mistake again. That is what he does to you in the film room. That's what he does to you in the locker room. That's what he does to you everywhere, to show the other coaches that, this guy is never taking my job. This guy is going to forever hold that clipboard, okay? Or you're just going to get rid of him. What is the story of supposedly Tom Brady, your favorite quarterback, Tom Brady did with Jimmy Garoppolo, okay? Allegedly, Brady orchestrated the whole trade. He's 40 years old. He orchestrates a trade to get rid of the quarterback of the future, send him to the 49ers. Why? Because if Brady is more confident in his job when he knows that the guy that they may want to replace him with isn't on the roster anymore, okay? He feels a hell of a lot better about that. So,
me personally, I think it was something a lot less professional. He was over in the corner, knelt down, crying, bawling about, Giselle got me under so much pressure. I can't perform, and my coach doesn't give me any credit. He doesn't love me. And Bob Kraft just said, "Dude, what'll make you feel better?" That was weak, but
if Tom Brady says he couldn't perform for his wife, never mind. We're not going to take this any further than that. This is a family show.
I ain't going there.
All right. So, well, we already kind of went over time, and we're now talking about Tom Brady's sex life. But let me just say, who I think the Saints would take at 27. And as of today, I think they're going to take a defensive tackle. And the tackles I'm looking at, there's always the Ohio State defensive end, Sam Hubbard. He's always going to be out there because, as they say, the Ohio State Pro Day is also known as the Saints Job Fair. So, it's Sam Hubbard is always a possibility at 27. Don't dismiss that. If he's on the board, he's probably going to be the highest rated player. But I really think they take a defensive tackle here. And I'm looking at
another name.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Another name that I could continue to hear, although I can't remember the name, the kid out of Boston College. I'm drawing a blank.
Hang on. I just had him a second ago. Let me grab him back again. Because I almost said.
And this, boys and girls, is why you make notes prior to showtime.
Harold Landry.
Why in the hell in South Louisiana? Why could I not think of the name Landry?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's another name I've seen mocked to the Saints quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. I think ideally if Vita Vea drops,
Yeah.
you're going to see the Saints draft table knocking people over, much like Bennett with a person in a wheelchair, a quadriplegic in a wheelchair. The Saints draft people will knock somebody out to get that card up there to grab him if he's available at 27. But
gotta watch this episode after we get done, and I'm gonna go. Yeah, it went sideways right there.
Yeah. The other person I think they're looking at kind of hard there is Maurice Hurst over there at Michigan. I think they like him a lot as well. I haven't seen his name show up in a lot of the visits, but I think they've got him circled pretty well at 27. But
the issue with Hurst is going to be his health, as I understand it. He has while it may not be quite to the extent of the Nick Fairley thing, it's something along the same lines. If I'm to understand it correctly.
No, you're pretty close. You're pretty close, and I think they will look at that hard. But that's the advantage of picking at 27 with a guy like that, because if your doctors feel comfortable about that, he may be worth taking a gamble at 27 as opposed to say 15 or higher.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance he could slide. And again, Hurst plays that he's a little undersized as a defensive tackle, but he can also kick out to defensive end. So he fills that defensive end, defensive tackle kind of position that the Saints like a lot. And they feel confident enough you can rotate him in and out with, again, that 8-man defensive front, okay, that they'd like to put together. So, yeah, those are my two leading candidates for defensive tackle, because I don't think Payne will be there. The Alabama guy, I think he goes early. And as far as defensive end, like I said, Sam Hubbard is always my pick, just because he went to the magical school. Arden Key is not on the Saints radar. I promise you that.
I guess the next thing you're going to tell me is that they're not willing to trade for OBJ.
Yeah, they're not going to do that.
I can't believe that I actually made my mouth say that.
Well, it's just like let's just cut through it all, okay?
Please do.
It's the same reason why the Saints weren't going to sign Jarvis Landry and make the trade for Jarvis Landry. There's only one receiver they're going to pay a lot of money to, and that's Michael Thomas. That's the guy they're going to invest the money in. You cannot afford to pay a Landry or Odell Beckham the kind of money he would be looking for, because whatever you pay those guys, you're going to have to pay Thomas more. And I don't care if it's in 2 years or whatever, because the way Mickey Loomis structures contracts, that money's going to be kicked over to much later, okay? So you're going to have a big cap figure the year you're going to be looking to pay for Michael Thomas. No, Michael Thomas's number 2 receiver is going to come out of the draft. Where out of the draft, I don't know, but that's where that guy's coming from, because he's going to be cheap. And when Thomas's contract comes up, that kid is still going to be in his rookie deal, and you can decide whether or not you're going to pay him much later. But the money's all going to Thomas right now. That's where the money's going to go. So
that's what I can never understand about Sue choosing to go to Los Angeles. Of course, Sue is making out like a madman, masked Avenger.
Yeah.
But everybody's talking about him being paired with Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald has been the franchise player on that defense for all this time now. And suddenly he's got to show up to camp lining up next to a guy that's just coming in making twice what they're paying him. We're talking about a mushroom cloud about to develop over Inglewood.
No, I'm just hoping that Hard Knocks decides to use the Rams this time. That's what I'm saying.
Oh God, please.
Yeah.
And we must have a live wireless mic on Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib, and Ndamukong Suh, please.
But here, here's the thing with Key. People are talking, and this is not because he went to LSU. Two things with Key. Number one, he's undersized for the Saints defensive line. He's what? I was looking at his stats a second ago. 6'5", 238. He is an outside linebacker size.
Yeah.
As far as the Saints are concerned. A 3-4 outside linebacker. Okay. He's probably going to play from a stand-up position, not put his hand in the dirt. And then, of course, it was the 2017 season where he's, who was up and down, rumored to want to quit football, that kind of stuff. All that, no matter how many interviews you do, no matter how many questions you have for a kid, he's going to tell you the answers you want to hear. But the question is, does he reach a point where, if things aren't going well, does he shut it down? That's a hell of a risk to take. I never liked the Saints to look at a player who has a reputation for taking plays off or letting the question his motivation for the game. You want a high motor player who is self-motivated. It's not the coach's job to get these kids motivated. You want a self-motivated player. So in this case, you want a defensive lineman, especially a pass rusher, who is hungry and ready to play every single snap and plays every snap like this is the play of the game he's got to make. I think Key just better suited for a true 3-4 defense where he can play the outside linebacker pass rusher specialist and let some other team risk that. If he was about, 30 pounds heavier, if he was 268 instead of 238, I'd be a lot more in favor of maybe we should take a shot on him. But he doesn't have the body size to put on 30 pounds and really keep that speed. I let some other team take a risk on that. That's not the kind of player you want. There's some other LSU players who are interesting that I would be interested in the Saints getting, and Chubb is not one. Not Chubb. The kicker. Thank you.
Chalk.
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 He is a guy. Yeah, Chalk. Isn't that what I said? Chalk. What is it?
Shark. There you go.
Like shark, except spelled with a CH.
Yeah.
That's a kid who was a true day 3 pick, but because he did the whole fastest receiver ever at Combine and looked really good running around in underwear, people are like wanting to put him in the first round already. And he body catches. He's not an accomplished route runner. He's somebody who's going to need some work. Okay. So you wait for a day 3 pick on somebody like that to be your kick returner, / 3rd and 4th receiver, not as your number 2 guy that you're ready for right now. So he is a guy that we can wait on. I like him, but as a day 3 pick, 5th rounder, around that area. That's where, if he's there, that's where I would take that guy. But we'll talk some more about that. We're about 15 minutes, 20 minutes over time as always.
So we're early.
Yeah, we're early.
I want to make one point.
Go ahead.
And all of our honorable and faithful LSU contingent. I love you. God bless you. You can hate me forever, but I'm going to say this. Something that you need to realize about your purple and gold Tigers, whether you like to admit it or agree with it or not, there are a ton of these guys who are of questionable backgrounds, are of questionable means, and they're on that fringe there between, yeah, they might make it in society, yeah, they might not, but they're exceptional football players. And looking at it from a professional standpoint, you're not going to look to invest multiple millions of dollars into a guy that you're not going of that background that, well, let me see. Say, for example, just for the sake of this argument, Arden Key, you're not going to give him multiple millions of dollars, not take him out of the questionable circumstances and surroundings that he's been involved with that seem to raise a lot of question marks for a lot of people, and hope that it turns out right. That's just not sound business acumen. You want to know why LSU or why LSU players succeed everywhere except New Orleans? That's why. These guys are being taken out of the environments where they've grown up in and they've basically screwed up in and had to start anew. How many of them have ever stayed in that environment and thrived? You know,
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about with that, and he even addressed it as much. He said that going back to New Orleans, it was not a good thing for him. It doesn't mean the Saints don't think he's a good player. They just realize it's not a good fit given the city and his friends, his entourage, and so forth affecting him. And I understand that. I totally get that. I think a lot of teams decide to do things based on, okay, this is a kid with a lot of potential, a lot of talent, but what's going to happen when he has his friends and neighbors around him and he suddenly has a lot of money? And I totally get that, and I think that's a legitimate concern. I think that's a concern almost in every team. That's why you see some teams pass on players just down the road from them. It used to be a joke in the 90s that Tampa Bay never took anybody from the University of Miami. Or no, it wasn't either Tampa Bay or Miami. I think it might have been the Miami Dolphins. Weren't taking anybody from the University of Miami. And here's Miami back then was turning out one great player after another. You just go down the list of all the quality players they were cranking out of that program in the 90s, in the late 80s, when Jimmy Johnson was there and so forth. So, that does become a concern. I just think for the really great players from LSU, a lot of people want those guys, just like a lot of people want Alabama players. And that's why the Saints don't take some of them, because it's not available. And in other cases, they just decide to go with a player with few distractions around him over a player that may have more distractions, and some are just mistakes. I'm not going to deny that. The Saints have made horrible mistakes in the draft. We were talking earlier, and I promise this is my last point, then we're going to have to go, but we were talking earlier about, my list of best player available in need. I think Stanley Jean-Baptiste from Nebraska in 2014, that was taking need over this, okay? Because you saw Tampa Bay take Mike Evans, and you saw Julio Jones go to Atlanta, and Calvin Benjamin go to Carolina. So you're looking at all these tall corner receivers. So you want a tall cornerback to compete with them. And they reached up and grabbed a big cornerback thinking he was going to be just like Richard Sherman. And he wasn't Richard Sherman. He wasn't anything like Richard Sherman. So, you took need over best player available and you got burned for it. So, the drafts, that's the danger of the draft. Anyway, we're going to get more into the draft, obviously. We'll talk more about what the Saints could do if they can get back into the second round next time. And, Sean, you have the draft show that you want to hype, the second annual Donnie Lambert Memorial Draft Program. So go ahead.
Draftapalooza. Yes. Let me start over. Following the model of last year, much the same. We'll have a special guest to open the show, someone that has valuable insight to what we've been talking about, and we'll follow that up in the last hour of the expanded 2-hour format by doing a live one-round, first round only mock draft. And as much as I like for the Saints to be involved in what it is we're doing on this show, the fact that we're picking number 27 means we had a really damn good year. But several of the guys from a year ago, Jack Kapansky, Bob Rose, John Butler, Matt Ulrich, and those are the only ones that I have written down at the moment. All of these guys are going to be involved in it this year as well, and we're going to make it bigger and better than we did a year ago. So we want to invite everyone the 24th of April at a special 7 p.m. starting time on that night. 2-hour format. Join us. We're going to have a blast. And we're going to tell between now and then, I'm going to go back on to our past episodes, and I'm going to tell you the correct percentage I'm going to tell you the percentage of what we got correct a year ago, and we're going to try to top that.
I know I was wrong. I was wrong on a lot of them. Yeah, we'll go through that next time. We'll pick the first 10 and tell you how close we were to that. As I said last time too, there are no trades. It is what the first round is as of the night before the first round of the draft. So obviously any draft trades they make that day are going to affect where we are, but we're more interested in that player going with that team or that player going at that slot.
Yeah.
So that's what's key on these things. Anyway, we'll talk more about that as we get closer. Thank you guys for sticking with us all this extra time here. I know we're almost supposed to be an hour, but when I start talking, I lose all track of time, even though I'm looking at the clock the whole time. Thank y'all again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
Love you guys.